The March 25th, 2024 meeting of the Environment and Public Works Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Bonnick. Ms. Bonnick is present. Ms. Delvecchio Hoffman. Ms. Delvecchio Hoffman is present. Chairwoman Hugh Smith.
Here.
Chairwoman Hugh Smith is present. Mr. Mafucci. Mr. Mafucci is present. Ms. McIntyre. Ms. McIntyre is present. Mr. Morris. Mr. Morris is present. Mr. Sinclair. Mr. Sinclair is present.
Is there anyone signed up for the public forum?
Yes, there is. When I call your name, please come forward to the podium. You will have 2 minutes in which to address the committee, and please conclude when the buzzer sounds. Marcus Williams.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Marcus C. Williams, not Marcus Williams. That's somebody else. So I came here to talk about the project to actually study if we can turn this into a public utility for RG&E. Years ago, I ran for city council and I supported the concept of RG&E being a public utility before it was fashionable. And now all of a sudden it's become very fashionable, but we have serious not only infrastructure issues, but power issues that are on the horizon that will be more important for us to look into than making RG&E a actual public utility. And the fact of the matter is that the majority of your constituents, everyone in the room included, do not believe in the ability of the government to really govern themselves, more or less a public utility. And that's a fact. Even though there are some people that come in here all the time and say otherwise, that's not the vast majority of the people. Aside from that, we should be instead taking that money that we're trying to allocate for that to focus on future energy generation for the needs that we will need, including looking into small modular nuclear reactors and actually putting forth a plan so that we can establish our county to prominence. If we want to grow, we're going to need more energy. And if we want it to be clean, we need to focus on nuclear. We also have abundant hydropower ability capacity, possibly, if we actually look into that as well. And that would be a much better use of probably half of the funds that we're looking at allocating for this. We have to focus on the future because we need to be ready for the energy future that we need today if we're going to work on growing our county. So I stand in opposition of this push to make RG&E public. And I hope that you guys actually vote this down at this time because we have other work that is more important to achieve and focus on first for the community. Thank you guys very much. You guys have a blessed one. Be blessed and be well.
The next item on the agenda, is there anyone present who is not signed up to speak who would like to address the committee at this time? Seeing none, this concludes public forum. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. You have the February 26, 2024 minutes of the Environment and Public Works Committee before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. The next item on the agenda is new business. Madam Clerk.
Referral 24-0093. Authorize a contract with Pacero Associates Engineering, Architecture, and Surveying PC for design services for the ramp garage maintenance repair project at the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport.
Moved by Legislator Mafucci, seconded by Legislator Bonnick. Any discussion? Legislator Morris.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the administration, will the parking garage have to close for any period of time to allow these repairs to take place?
Through the chair, no, it will not. This potential project down the road will be phased in, and certainly a contractor will be working with our parking operator to make sure that no area of the parking garage is closed.
Thank you. I yield.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Okay, next item.
Referral 24-0094. authorization to enter into a grant agreement with the New York State for aid relating to 3 projects at the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport.
Moved by legislator Mafucci, seconded by legislator Bonnet. Any discussion? There's Sinclair.
Through the chair of the administration. When are these projects expected to be completed?
Through the chair, these projects are already completed. They were completed in the winter of 2024 or a couple months ago. And this is just kind of a contractual obligation that we have with the state of New York in order to ensure that we receive the state share of these projects.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any nays? Item carries. Next item,
Referral 24-0095, acceptance of a grant from the Oswego County Soil and Water Conservation District for the Water Quality Program and authorize an intermunicipal agreement with the Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District.
moved by legislator Mafucci, seconded by legislator Bonnet. Is there any discussion on this? Later, McIntyre.
Through the chair. What are some of the water quality programs this will fund?
Through the chair, there will be funding that will be allocated to our longstanding agreement with the United States Geological Survey for stream monitoring. There's a number of stream gauges that we have around the county, and we're able to monitor water levels there. We also have funding set aside for the H2O Hero Stormwater Education Program. You may have seen billboards and other public education material in the community about protecting stormwater, what residents can do. There's also funding that will go towards the Soil and Water Conservation District for stream bank erosion remediation projects, as well as their watercraft steward program that will minimize invasive species going into our local water bodies.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item on the agenda,
Referral 24-0096, authorize an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Penfield for the use of a county-owned parcel located at 1775 Kennedy Road.
moved by legislator Mafucci, seconded by legislator Bonnet. Is there any discussion? Legislator Morse.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the administration. Is this plot of land currently being used for any other purposes at this time?
Through the chair, no, it is not.
I yield.
Legislator Mafucci.
Is the town of Penfield financing the projects?
Through the chair, yes, they are. And this is necessary for the town as they construct their new DPW facility.
Thank you. I have one more additional question through the chair to the administration. Will the construction from the projects remain after this agreement expires?
Yes, through the chair, the county will have ownership of any improvements on county property and will determine if the county wants to keep those improvements in place for its use.
As a follow-up question to legislator Mafucci, if the county decides that they would not want the road or whatever improvements, is it our expense to remove it, or would Penfield carry that expense?
Through the chair, the way the IMA is currently drafted, it would be our expense because they would be our assets. They most likely would have value to the county. My expectation is that the county would find use of those assets, so it would ultimately be the county's responsibility to remove those.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item on the agenda.
Referral 24-0101, designation to serve as lead agency, classification of action, and determination of significance pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the Highway Preventative Maintenance Number 10 project in the towns of Brighton, Henrietta, and Gates.
Moved by legislator Mafucci, seconded by legislator Bonnet. Is there any discussion? Claire?
Through the chair to the administration, why is there no preliminary classification as we typically see in the seeker?
Through the chair, if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's on specific legislative action number 2. It's an unlisted action.
Yeah, sorry.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Referral 24-0108, classification of action and determination of significance pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the sale of county-owned tax foreclosure property located at Better Ridge Road in the town of Riga.
Moved by legislator Mafucci, seconded by legislator Bonnet. Is there any discussion? Mr. McIntyre.
Through the chair, what is this property going to be used for?
Through the chair, the county is not aware of any end use at this time.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Legislator McIntyre, are you all set?
On this, so I would assume that there is some sort of intentional. If there's a secret, I would assume that that we do know that there's some sort of use that will be done with this property. What exactly are they going to use it for? What do we know about this particular?
Through the chair, the county has offered for sale and this individual's come forward to purchase the property. We don't inquire on use at this time.
Okay. Thank you. I yield.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item on the agenda.
Referral 24-0110, classification of action and determination of significance pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the sale of county-owned tax foreclosure property located at Idle Lane, Rochester, New York, in the town of Brighton.
Moved by legislator Mafucci, seconded by legislator Bonnet. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item on the agenda.
Referral 24-0116, commit unassigned fund balance for the specific purpose of studying the feasibility of a publicly owned utility in Monroe County. Authorize an intermunicipal agreement with the city of Rochester.
Moved by legislator Mafucci, seconded by legislator Bonnet. Is there any discussion? Legislator Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the sponsor of the legislation, why is there no signature block for the county executive on the resolution? Is it a clerical error or an attempt to remove the county executive from the process?
There's no attempt to remove the county executive through the process, so it must be a clerical error.
Then I would like to make a motion to amend the proposed resolution to include the county executive's signature block for approval or veto.
Second.
Staff, I'm sorry, staff is handing out copies of it now. So moved.
Second.
This be appropriate if there was no intent to intentionally leave the county executive signature block off it, then I think that this amendment addresses ensuring that that be placed on it.
And seconded by legislator Sinclair. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Now moving to the, back to the the referral as amended. Is there any other discussion? Senator Morse.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you. Question through you to the law department. Is it lawful to allow select relevant stakeholders and community leaders to have input to the development of an RFP?
Through the chair, anyone who had any input into the development of an RFP could not then participate in the in responding to the RFP. Under our purchasing policy, we therefore carefully control who can. There are occasions when there's a particular consultant engaged to help structure an RFP because they might have subject matter expertise, and then you know exactly who can't reply to an RFP. So in structuring any sort of committee or public input, that would need to be carefully controlled.
And again, through you, Madam Chair, again, to the law department, should this study come back as favorable, does the county even have the authority to take over a private company like RG&E that not only does not serve every Monroe County resident and serves outside our municipal boundaries?
Through the chair, I think that would have to be squared away as part of the study. I think we would need legal input regarding that. Generally speaking, the county's authority ends at the county's border.
Thank you. And again, through you, Madam Chair, question to the sponsor of the legislation. What do you have in mind for inclusion in the IMA that would have to be brought back before this honorable body? We normally don't approve IMAs.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
What do you have in mind for inclusion in the IMA itself that would have to be brought back before this honorable body? It's my understanding in reading the legislation that the intimation is that this would come back to us. Normally, that's not a procedure that we participate in.
I think we have to do a study first before we can answer some of those more specific questions.
For clarification, you're asking why the intermunicipal agreement would need to return to this body.
Correct.
I guess I would pass that on to the county attorney as we submitted this to the law department for their review.
Through the chair, there's nothing objectionable about it. The legislature, it sets the conditions where the specific, I guess, terms of the agreement would be come back to this body. So I don't think it is traditionally, I think the legislative action would authorize an IMA, perhaps with some more specificity, but then the agreement wouldn't have to come back. There's nothing legally improper about having it come back again.
That's just a follow-up question again, Madam Chair, through you to the Law Department. Have we seen something like this in the legislature before, to your best of your knowledge?
Through the chair, no, not to my recollection.
Through the chair to the sponsor, please describe the scope and the parameters of the study.
The study is to address whether or not it's feasible for the county to take over RG&E and have public power like so many other municipalities throughout the United States. I think one of the questions that's going to be answered by the study is what we can and can't do. Everything from infrastructure to costs, a lot of the parameters are going to be set by the study. And there's a lot of questions that we don't have the answers to yet. And that I think a lot of folks would like to have the answers to, and a lot of folks have postulated to having the answers to, but until we do a study, we really don't know for sure. And ourselves and the community can't make an informed decision about whether or not this is a good next step for our community.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you again to the sponsor. If the county's being asked, or we're being asked to approve $1 million for a study, I would hope that there would be at least some initial scope and parameters, as opposed to, I guess, just forming the group and not giving them any direction on what to go in. Is there, maybe not in the legislation, but is there, do you have an idea of some parameters or a scope at this point?
Are you saying specifically for the advisory group to the RFP?
Yes.
This was a point of contention for this piece of legislation. And so what's before us currently gives the administration a lot of leeway to decide what community experts and community members can be a part of that search. I think everybody knows that who was on that search committee was a point of contention. And so in order to move forward, I think it needed to be left up to the administration to make some of those decisions.
That provides some additional context for you as a order of the amendment of the referral. So it is the job of county staff, as we know, to develop the RFP. Their materials have been shared with county staff of other sample studies that have been done. It would be our hope that there would be analysis of both the all the infrastructure that is owned by RG&E, and as well as some governance structures and any legal, uncertainties that we currently have questions about, like the one that was raised earlier. So all three aspects of that would be our hope. Legislator McIntyre?
Yes, through the chair to the sponsor. You mentioned that there are so many municipalities that are already using the system. Are any of those municipalities as large as what we would intend to do with Monroe County?
I mean, I believe the state of Nebraska is one of them. So yes, from local to statewide, there are folks as large as us, folks smaller than us, folks bigger than us.
Okay. And through the chair to the sponsor, who specifically and what do you mean by creating a public process for relevant stakeholders and community leaders to offer their input regarding the development of criteria for the study RFP?
I mean, we've received thousands at this point of communication from constituents. There are a lot of folks really interested in this process and who want to be a part of it. And so this referral allows the county administration to be creative in how that process is developed. But considering there are so many folks who want to ensure that the process is accountable and done well, does that answer your question? I mean, so this is something that the county does. On a frequent basis, they initiate RFPs. There are sometimes committees that do that. It's sometimes just done internally. It's not something that is out of the ordinary for community members put into something like this, but it's obviously not specific in the referral. So potentially professors, potentially scientists, potentially public power experts. There's a lot of talent in the community that we would benefit from in developing this process.
Legislator Morse.
Follow-up question to the sponsor through you, Madam Chair. Is the intent is some of the organizations that have come and spoken before our body that have specifically called for it or wanted to ensure that it happens, would members of any of these organizations be expected to be involved with the crafting of the RFP? And if so, I guess the follow-up is, shouldn't the RFP or an RFQ be handled without outside influence or pressure to help guard against corruption or aggressive tactics involved or anything like that?
Through the chair, that wouldn't be up to me who was on the committee, and so that's maybe more of a question for the administration.
If I may, we specifically have structured the referral to allow the county staff to develop the process. This is, as my colleague noted, something that county staff does all the time. We have had public input on the development of active transportation plan, the comprehensive plan, the climate action plan, many other things. So whether they wanted to create a committee or whether they want to hold a series of events, have, website where people can submit written comments, so forth and so on, we were leaving to the discretion of county staff what that might entail. Our hope would be that they would seek the input of some experts, like some professors.
I suppose the sponsor, but I think as a general question, this advisory board for the selection, would they be paid? And how much? Because here we're talking about $1 million. And while we deal with millions of dollars in the county budget, this is certainly a lot of money to be putting at a study. And we don't know if that money is going to be even enough to approach a study like this.
Certainly. So we did not, in the referral, does not have an advisory board. It just leaves a public input request
Okay.
for county staff. And you're right, we're committing $1 million for an RFP. Should RFPs come back that would be above that, that would require additional authorization, which this body may choose not to pursue.
Okay, but then again, through the chair and with all due respect, this is $1 million. And that seems like a great deal of money to be spending on a study that we really, it would seem that the county does not have the funding to buy RG&E. And would our taxpayers even want us to buy RG&E? We know some would, right? But I'm sure many wouldn't. And this is such a large question, spending $1 million right now, when that $1 million could be spent for so many other things, just on an RFP, just to get the study started, when the parameters are really so vague. I guess I would need a lot more of an explanation. It doesn't feel like we're getting very specific explanations about how this money would be spent if we were to okay it.
It would be spent, I'm not sure if that was a question or more of a statement, but it would be spent on a study to answer some of the myriad of questions that do remain. Find out.
Okay.
So if you would like to see a sample RFP, like a draft RFP with a scope that has been shared with administration, would be.
Well, I guess we're looking at $1 million, right?
Certainly. Yep.
To find out if we could purchase RG&E. But I think that that's a simple accounting. We could look at how much RG&E would cost overall and ask them, how much would it cost to buy your structure? And look at what we have in the budget. And without looking, I can surmise that we probably do not have the money to buy RG&E. So Therefore, the referral in and of itself, to me, is a point of confusion when we don't need $1 million to answer this question. Or at least, again, this is a statement. I don't mean to be in any way, shape, or form.
No problem at all, Legislator, McIntyre. The point of how much is the current value of RG&E? That's a financial analysis that would have to be conducted by an independent third party. It would need to be at the rate of depreciation. So, right, things have been installed 100 years ago, you would pay the depreciated rate. Once we had that information, then we would know what the overall cost was. After that, there are a number of different mechanisms by which, right, governments can bond at much lower rates of borrowing than public entities or private entities can. So we would have to look at that finance. That's part of the information that we will need to get through the study.
But through the chair, would that not have to go to a public vote
Absolutely.
long before we get to that? So we're spending $1 million
we would-
before we even go to a public vote as to whether the public, the entire public would be interested in the acquisition of such a large property.
For sure. And with all due respect, Legislator McIntyre, I think we need the information. Once we have the information, then this body would decide if we want to move forward to sharing that with the public. And the public, it would have to be a referendum for the public to decide if they wanted to move forward or not. So ultimately, it would be a public decision.
But we're spending the $1 million before that public decision even happens.
We wouldn't, well, it might not be $1 million. We would go out to, we're allocating $1 million for a study. We need to go to bid for, to procure the services. There are estimates from experts that are much below that, but we would find out through the competitive bid process what experts are willing to do this type of study for. Legislator?
The chair, to Legislator McIntyre, I really appreciate your turn. I think having been through a few rounds of this, it looks more vague or non-specific because we don't have an RFP in front of us. And once an RFP is designed, it gets more specific with asks for respondents. And once someone responds and makes a proposal, it gets more specific. And once the study comes back, it gets even more specific. So in a way, doing a study is actually doing due diligence before making a larger, more expensive decision so that the community and this honorable body are able to make a fully informed decision about whether or not it makes sense to move forward. And $1 million, like the chair said, it could come back to be a different price, but it's not unprecedented for us to spend that type of money on a study. I appreciate your due diligence, but we do need answers, and this is the next step, in my opinion, of getting some of those answers.
Legislator Mafucci.
Explain my vote. However, I would defer if there are more questions.
Legislator Morse. Sure.
Through you, Madam Chair, before I ask my question to the sponsor, I think Legislator McIntyre sort of helped us almost kind of get to the end here, and that is, can Monroe County taxpayers foot the bill for the purchase of RG&E? I would harry a guess that we're probably talking about billions of dollars. I'm not in the industry, but I would feel that probably is not too far off on what we'd then be asking county taxpayers to bear the brunt of. But through you, again, to the sponsor, since this study is meant to examine the feasibility of a county-wide public utility, existing public utilities such as Fairport Electric would be included in the study?
It's for RG&E, and that's not RG&E property.
Okay. Would you then, I guess to sponsor, or through you, Madam Chair, would you support if there was an amendment to prohibit the study from looking into replacement of any utilities of that nature similar to Fairport Electric?
I'm not sure I quite follow.
Specific language that would prohibit the study to look into replacement of Fairport Electric or others that have a specific
I personally would have no objection. I don't think it's necessary by definition.
The Chair to the sponsor, what's the basis and where did you get the $1.5 million price point to fund this study? I mean, here we're talking about $1 million, but I'm also hearing above and beyond $1 million. That's why I quote 1.5 to fund this between city and county combined.
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's studies across the country that have occurred before of various size municipalities. And some of those experts have suggested that that would be expected amount.
And of those other studies, how many of those studies led to the purchase of such a large company as RG&E would be?
Sure, well, some of those are still in process of making that determination, but for example, the Long Island Power Authority was established in the 80s, 90s. It took over from the Long Island Lighting Company. And so went through this process and, took over assets, bonded, so forth, and it ended in a reduction of rates by 20% for ratepayers. So public power across the country operates at lower costs than the private ones, and approximately 2/3 of utilities across the country are public utilities. So this is simply a study to look at what might be the situation if we wanted to consider moving in that direction.
So through the chair, sponsor, are you in contact with, do you have personally experience with a public utility of this nature? Yourselves, personal experience living under public utilities?
The chair, is the question whether or not I have experience living under public utilities?
Yes, anyone that was involved in this. I mean, is there anyone involved in this referral that has experience living under a public utility?
I have never lived under a public utility. I've actually lived under the tyranny of RG&E for
Well,
most of my life.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I have lived under a public utility for 20 years in Italy,
Through the-
so
through the
I have a
chair,
great
though.
deal of experience.
So yes, to answer your question, Legislator McIntyre, one of the sponsors lives in Fairport and has Fairport Electric as their utility, which is one of the highest rated utilities in our state.
Through you, again, to the sponsor yourself, if you'd like to answer. Does the city of Rochester need to reauthorize their funding? Because since it was approved in the previous fiscal year, do they have their money appropriated?
Great question. Yeah, their fiscal year runs through up until July, so through June. So they do not need to go back for any further action.
Do you happen to know if, again, through you, Madam Chair, if for some reason this extended beyond it, are the county doing this or what have you, if they would have to reappropriate their funding?
Well, so my understanding is that they've authorized, whichever the term is, that right, they've authorized the money, and as soon as we pass it, then they can take action to allocate that money. So, okay. Another question?
Yes, please.
Certainly.
All right. Through the chair to the sponsor again. If there's such widespread community support for this study, why do taxpayers have to foot the bill for this instead of fundraising?
Taxpayer dollars footing the study, that's one of the questions that we're looking to answer.
Thank you.
One last question. Through you, Madam Chair, to the sponsor or yourself. If it turns out that the study will end up costing more than 1.5 million, do the sponsors of the legislation support adding additional funding or appropriating additional funding from the county for this?
response to it, what their proposals are, and make the decision at that time.
For you, Madam Chair, is there like, how much is enough, or is there an understanding of what, what's a stop point that, you might have personally?
Certainly Legislator Morris. I've not considered what's my absolute no. I'm willing to commit $1 million. If it came back 4 times that, I would be a no. If it came back 1.25, I don't know, I'd have to give that some thought. But I'm willing to commit the $1 million, get some proposals back in and reconsider. Does that
Fair
answer your
enough.
question?
I yield.
Legislator Mafucci.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'd like to explain my vote, and it's kind of interesting. The educator in me is going to come out. And you can tell by all the questions that were asked. This really is a teachable moment. 2017, when I was first elected, an audit by the New York State Comptroller found the county's available fund balance totaled $1.9 million. I'll repeat that, $1.9 million. That's it. Resulting in the county being one of the most fiscally stressed governments in New York State. Over the past several years, in a bipartisan way, and I want to emphasize that, in a bipartisan way, we've built back the county's financial position with far more available fund balance, significantly strengthening the county's financial position. We have increased spending substantially over the past several years, successfully addressing many of the county's service-related issues, completing contract negotiations, timely and respectful manner, and increasing county employees' compensation, while improving the county's credit rating. While the county's finances have improved, we must remain vigilant and manage spending in a fiscally responsible way. $1 million is a lot of money. I will vote yes on this referral, as the Environment and Public Works Committee is the lead committee. An affirmative vote on the referral will allow the entire legislature to consider the many issues, many came out already here at our meeting tonight, surrounding the funding of a multi-million-dollar study to convert RG&E into a public.
I'd like to explain my vote and my opposition to this legislation. While legitimate concerns exist with RG&E, this is simply not the solution. Dissolving a private company or spending $1 million of taxpayer money on a study to do so is not the way to fix the problem. While some concerns are legitimate, the largest supposed motivating factors are simply not true. No, millions of dollars are not sent to Spain. In reality, RG&E received $225 million in equity contributions from Avangrid, allowing $350 million in capital improvements for customers. In reality, RG&E employs more than 800 local residents, has donated over $1.1 million to local causes, and since 2019 has provided $27 million in economic development contributions to Rochester. In reality, RG&E paid over $174 million in tax revenue to local towns and the state, including over $111 million in property taxes in Monroe County, with $23 million to Monroe County, $268,000 to villages in Monroe County, and $37 million to school districts in Monroe County. And in reality, these things matter. The issue is that those proposing this takeover instead choose to operate in a fantasy. In their alternative world, gas and electric are magically delivered free of charge to residents across Monroe County. The employees whose families survive off their paychecks from RG&E can just go find another job, and the government can run as effectively as a private company. Those of us here in the real world understand that none of this is true. Just like many local labor leaders who have spoken out against this push for a takeover, including Laborers 435, who we all recently received a letter from Dan Coons, the business manager from that local, in opposition to this. Local IB EW 36, Upstate New York Operating Engineers, Local 158, and the Rochester Building and Construction Trades Council. Or the business leaders who have spoken out against this, including Upstate United and the Rochester Chamber of Commerce. There is also a question of the legality of such a takeover. Not only does RG&E not cover every Monroe County resident, but its reach also extends beyond Monroe County. This is all without even looking at the places that have actually implemented or attempted to implement a public utility. Like in Long Island, where residents saw higher customer bills, nearly double, delayed billing and customer service, and more customer overcharges. Or in Boulder, Colorado, where in 2010, they began working for a public utility. By 2020, 10 years later, they had spent $29 million in a costly legal battle that ended with the city just going back to the privately owned utility. Or in Maine, where a proposal to take over their largest utilities is estimated to cost $12.5 billion, averaging $17,000 per Maine electric customer. Here in Monroe County, it is estimated that such a takeover of RG&E will cost over $10.5 billion, an amount nearly 9 times the size of our current county budget, and an amount that all of which, by law, would have to be financed by debt. In summary, this is the reality of this public takeover push, opposed by laborers, opposed by business leaders, removing over $100 million in tax revenue to replace it with $10.5 billion of taxpayer debt, and it would increase bills and taxes while decreasing customer service and efficiency. No one who operates in reality can in good conscience or stewardship of taxpayer dollars support this study or takeover. I hope my colleagues who do will join me in voting no.
Legislator Delvecchio Hoffman.
Sorry, Chair, I have one further question. Through the chair to, what is the purpose of the added language to section 4 of the resolution?
Through the chair, I did not draft the language, so I can't, I guess I can't speak for anyone else, but it cites, frankly, I don't view it as necessary, but I also don't really view it as changing the meaning of whether it's cited section C27 of the charter or whether it's cited section C27 sub A, sub 3, sub A. Either way, what it is referencing, what that section A, sub 3, sub A references is the process by which the county executive either approves or vetoes a resolution. So in my mind, it doesn't change the meaning, whether it just said C27 or whether it added those subsections.
Thank you so much.
Senator McIntyre.
As well. I haven't drafted anything, but I have to speak on this as someone who lived abroad in a country that had public utilities across the board. And there is a promise with many public services of helping those most in need, helping those that are being overcharged and overburdened, and making things more equitable. But my experience, 20 years of living with public utilities, is it did just the opposite. In my own small apartment, I was spending, in order to heat my home in the winters, the equivalent of $700 a month. And I was living on a fixed income at that time. When I would tell my mother exactly how much I was spending for electricity, for water, and for gas, her jaw would drop in comparison to what we pay even now. So this is back in 2008, 2009. My energy bills were double, triple, quadruple what my mother was spending here in her small house in 14606. So I cannot in good conscience, I realize that the people that support this and they feel, I wasn't even in this office yet while I was sitting in the crowds, listening to this debate last year, sitting with many of the people from Metro Justice, and I understand completely how passionately they feel about this issue and how much they believe that this would help the poorest members of our community. But I have seen in my own personal experience that something like this would do just the opposite. And I cannot in good conscience vote even to do a study of spending $1 million of our taxpayers' money to do a study of this nature.
Thank you. I may have more remarks at the full legislature, but like you, I'd not come prepared with some remarks, but I'll make a couple. We all live with public utility now. It's called the Monroe County Water Authority, and it delivers fantastic service at very affordable rates. So we all have experience with living with public utility. I'm looking for information. I could make an argument as to why we should switch and an argument as to why we can't switch. And all the good questions that you have raised today are exactly the questions that I would like answered by an objective third-party analysis. And that's why I'm voting in the affirmative to fund a study. So we have the answers and can do the work that the citizens of this county expect us to do, looking out for their well-being. So with that being said, I'm just going to assume we have a roll call vote. Roll call vote, please.
Legislator Bonnick. Legislator Bonnick votes yes. Legislator Dovecchio Hoffman. Legislator Dovecchio Hoffman, yes. Legislator Mafucci. Legislator Mafucci's in the affirmative. Legislator McIntyre. Legislator McIntyre is in the negative. Legislator Morris. Legislator Morris votes in the negative. Legislator Sinclair. Legislator Sinclair votes in the negative. Chairwoman Hugh Smith.
Yes.
Chairwoman Hugh Smith votes in support. With a 4-3 vote, referral passes as amended.
Are there any other matters to come before the committee? There being no other matters, the March 25th, 2024 meeting, the Environment and Public Works Committee stands adjourned. Next meeting of the Environment and Public Works Committee will be held on Monday, April 22nd, 2024 at 5:15 p.m.